Hi, I'm Dennis Green with the Culture Crawl, and today it's part 2 of my multi-part interview with John J.R. Robinson, a studio drummer who grew up in Creston, Iowa, so an Iowa native, and went on to become the most recorded drummer in modern music history, performing on records with Rufus, the Pointer Sisters, Michael Jackson, Lady Gaga, George Benson, and hundreds more. He recently released his autobiography, which is called King of the Groove. We spoke for more than an hour. Obviously, we're not going to go an hour here, but the full versions of both segments of my interview are available on KCCK's Facebook and YouTube channels. In today's segment, John talks about how studio recording has changed post-COVID and his current projects, including SRT, the organ trio he formed with Iowa native and leading Omaha keyboardist Mitch Towne. Here's part 2 of my conversation with John J.R. Robinson. You talked about in the studio the effect that you changing that fill and really getting to feel for it, that changed how the other players played. That made a whole difference for that whole track for now this legendary song. Today, John, people don't go to the studio together anymore. A lot of times you may not even meet the other musicians who are on that record. So just talk a little bit about that change and about how that affects what you do as a musician.
The one thing that I'm actually calling now from my control room. This is my control. I've got my giant digital console here and my keyboards here and all this stuff. And I've got this DWE electronic drum set here. That's now brand new wireless technology and things to write for when I write for records, producing, or motion pictures, which I'm working on a couple of films right now. But the thing is if you don't interact with another human, how do you know if the part that you are presenting to them is going to be magical enough or good enough? So by everybody isolating, COVID was a giant excuse for this to come to a fruition. But the point being is that, yes, when you listen to TV now and you listen to people like jingles, like taking you through the thing, it's probably 75% of the time, it's probably some guy like me in a control room doing it all by himself and submitting out, because that's what the jingle industry wants. When people listen to the NFL on NBC, that's me. Ba 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 da 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 ba ba da da ya. So all that we did that. I did that with 15 years ago with John Williams, and then later about eight years ago or so, we redid it here with my drum parts with newer, updated themes. But that was me. But then all the horns were together. But again, it is really special if I can be with Lee and Dean Parks and Greg Fellinganes in a room and record something, and then you live and breathe and corral everybody's own emotions, and then what comes out is then the baby that was conceived from the four guys. That's that's the special thing. That's why modern jazz has been stepped on by this new kind of crap, smooth jazz. It's jive. But the thing with smooth jazz is there are people on stage playing in real time, or recording mostly in real time, we hope. We're turning into our parents. Our parents listen to big bands, and then the generation after me, they were listening to whatever, Foo Fighters and blah, blah, blah. Now, if there's not an organization to keep or a place to see live players play, and the average person doesn't even want to compensate these poor guys they've mastered their crafts, and then they want to go out and play on a Saturday night. And what are they making? $20? They should be making $2,000 playing this art form. And I'm an advocate about art. I have a foundation called Music Through Arts Fund, and it's about helping young kids and even dancers with musicians and arts in schools. I live in California. It's rough here. They want football. This is almost like Texas, except it's blue. And but it's tough. Iowa, where we grew up, we had music in schools. We had it. It was part of it, or it was elective, but it was part of the school curriculum.
We've talked a lot about your studio experience in rock and pop. But you are all along, you've always been, and it's very obvious in the book, that you're a jazz fan. And you had jazz connections all the way along, because you mentioned early on getting Freddie Hubbard in on a Rufus session.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the songs that and the artists that really influenced you, those are all jazz guys.
Yeah, I did get to work with some amazing people. And, it did start from that recommendation from in Boston from the great drummer Joe Hunt, where I started playing with Chick Corea's cousin named Lynn Stewart, playing properly jazz with a jazz vocalist. Then I had a jazz trio in Boston with Sue Claire and John Lockwood on bass and a great guitarist named John Basili. He's in New York, and if anybody hadn't checked him, he's got probably 8 solo records out. He used to study with Bucky Pizzarelli, and John mastered the 7-string. So his name is John Basili. Just a great cat. I still may do something with him down the line. But that led me into, I'm never going to lose this fantasy about jazz. However, when we first started becoming Quincy's posse, we'd all be in there, and during the little break time, we'd be blowing something. There's giant steps. That's that, blah, blah. All right, let's go, guys. Talk back. And he goes, by the way, save all that for your solo records. And okay, he was the first guy I ever heard say that. And now everybody says it. So it was like, okay, he didn't want any of this stuff. And so there was 2 other conversion moments. One was when I was first starting to rehearse with Bobby Watson and Tony Maiden from Rufus over at Bobby's house. So it was a little crappy drum set. It didn't matter. It was just kick, snare, and a hat. And I'm started playing some hip fills, and Tony goes, John, don't ever play that again. I go, okay. I'm coming out of Billy Cobham. I'm in love with Billy Cobham. I think what he did was just monumental. Little did I know that was the end of monumental-dom. What he had done was, to me, never to be duplicated. Not to take anything away from the great Dave Weckler, Steve Smith, or Vinnie Colaiuta, but that's a whole nother ballgame. What Billy Cobham did was Jerome Bettis running through the friggin' Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line and scoring every time. That's what I thought about it. Learning what Quincy told me and what Bobby Watson and Tony told me. And then we're playing with the Quincy Jones Band in '82 at the New Orleans Superdome. Everybody knows it. And it's been there. And it's packed. And we're out there, with James Ingram, Patty Austin, Lewis Johnson, Greg Fillinganes, Toots Thielemans, just keeps going. But it's 20 minutes before the show, and Quincy goes, JR, come here. And I'm see all these people. It was starting to pack up. And I'm pointing way up to the upper left of this giant place. And he goes, they don't give a what you're playing on your hi-hat. And he turned around and walked away. And I'm going, damn. I thought he was going to say, John, those people know you. He goes, no, they don't want to hear any of this flurry crap that you're playing on your hi-hat. He just wants it locked. He just wants it straight as an arrow. Sell tickets, put people in the seats, dance floor. And so it resonated with me. So from all that flurriness and learning about jazz and then becoming a jazz drummer and then idolizing Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson and Gene Krupa and going through all that stuff with Ed Soph, I realized that, I guess who I really am is this meat and potatoes guy that puts asses on the dance floor. But you were talking about jazz and influence. I had every single Buddy Rich record ever and realized, how does this guy play like this? But in reality, then later I started studying Buddy when he's playing in small groups and listening how he controlled a band that way. You can see why he grew into this big band god and how he commanded things.
Let's talk about SRT for just a minute. I had the pleasure of seeing SRT at your show in Omaha this past summer. Mitch Towne on the organ, who we had in a trio configuration with his friend Steve Grismore at one of our concerts this past summer. But that's you and Mitch and Andrew Sinowick.
That is correct. And that was formed during COVID. Like everybody did, everybody was looking for something. And because everything was taken away from us, it was almost like, who can describe how bad it was? But Mitch had come up to me. I was in Omaha. And little did I know, Mitch and his buddy, I can't remember who it was, came up to me as I'm packing up. And he goes, you're John, right? Yeah. He goes, man, I'm Mitch. I'm from Missouri Valley. I go, cool. I live in Omaha. Cool. All right. Yeah, I've heard stuff about you from Ronnie Foster and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, by the way, do you ever want to do a trio record? And I was like, if they don't ask, how do you know the answer? So I go, yeah, I'd love to do a trio record. I always used to do trio records in Boston and in the old days, on organ trios. And I go, okay. So then I came through at another time, and we went up to the club that Brian owned, the Jewel, and I came in right after the gig and came up, and Nathan was on the gig, Nathan East, and Dean Parks was on the gig. And I told these cats, you got to come in, and they want us to play a little bit. So we came in and we blew. So that led into me doing the J.R. Robinson experience later in Omaha. At that same time, right after that, we had decided to cut a record. And we didn't have a guitar player, and we were looking through different guitar players. And I go, I got this guy. He's like the new young blood in Los Angeles. And we had done that movie Bullet Train together. And then now we've since done Shaka Khan's new record. He's from Baltimore area and went to the University of Miami. So we started writing, and the writing became equal, or co. And then we did the record. And I had literally just come off COVID 3 days before that. I was way overweight, couldn't breathe. I was playing okay, but it was difficult when we cut that record. And then the rest is history. We've been working a lot, and now I'm busy doing a whole different direction here right now.
Let's talk about current and new projects. You hinted that you're doing some film work.
Yeah, and I have. There's a great documentary director named Danny Gold. If you guys haven't watched the new Blake Edwards story, I think it's on PBS mostly. That was Julie Andrews' last husband. Blake Edwards was Pink Panther, just all sorts of great stuff. But Danny directed that. And I've done 4 movies with Danny. I've scored 3 of them. And now I'm working with a gentleman named Kerry Wayne Durkin. And we've got 2 films that we're working on called The Survivor's Room. And the other one is Mario Lanza, the great operatic pop singer, and those are just being finalized now. So, I'm actually writing and scoring for that. So that was in the beginning stages. What's taken up this was 2 years. This was 2 years to do this. Records are easier than a book. Books are hard, man.
The book is called King of the Groove. John, we've only scratched the surface of your amazing career, but people will just have to read the book and read some of these stories.
There's some really good stuff. And just so everybody knows, this is not just for musicians. This is a book about a positive energy progression in your life, doing the right thing, looking in the mirror, making the correct decisions. And it's not a preacher book either. It has something with everyone. It just happens to be that I'm the conduit through a lot of this stuff. And there's a lot of great memories that you guys will get. Oh my God, really? I remember that. And I tried to leave the dirt out on this particular level of my career. I was always told if you write a book about dirt, don't plan on working. I don't think that's working now with what's going on today, but I think everybody will like it. Go to kingofthegroove.com or Amazon King of the Groove.
John, again, this has been a great pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time. And with any kind of luck, we'll get you back in Iowa sometime soon. You can hear The Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:30, on demand at kcck.org/culture, or subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Watch our videos on the KCCK Facebook and YouTube channels. Our producer is Lydia Kilgore. The Culture Crawl theme is composed by Vivian Shanley. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.